ABC 10 News at 5 starts now.
People in Louisville, Kentucky and across the U.S. are unleashing their anger after learning no officers will be charged directly with Breonna Taylor's death. Good evening, I'm Lindsay Pena.
And I'm Steve Atkinson. Today, a grand jury indicted a former officer for his actions, but no charges were announced against the other two officers who fired the shots, nor was any officer charged directly with her death. Protests across the nation are happening tonight. And these are live pictures right now from Washington, D.C., where you can see this large crowd has gathered outside there tonight, the fire pits there. As ABC's Rena Roy shows us, tensions are rising.
Wanton endangerment in the first degree, extreme indifference to human life.
Today, a Jefferson County grand jury presented its report on the Breonna Taylor case, charging one officer involved in the fatal shooting of the EMT.
My team set out to investigate the circumstances surrounding Ms. Taylor's death. We did it with a singular goal in mind: pursuing the truth.
Former officer Brett Hankison now facing 3 counts of wanton endangerment in the first degree. But none of those counts are related to the homicide of Breonna Taylor herself.
We want full transparency. We want the truth. Breonna Taylor's death should not be swept under the rug in any way. Her life matters.
Hankison, Officer Miles Cosgrove, and Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly are accused of shooting into Breonna Taylor's apartment back in March in the middle of the night. However, there was no mention of those other 2 officers in today's hearing.
And our investigation found that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in their use of force.
Taylor, a 26-year-old EMT, was shot and killed by police when they executed a search warrant. The officers were investigating a suspected drug operation linked to Taylor's ex-boyfriend. No drugs were found in their search. Her death sparked mass protests coast to coast. Demonstrators chanting, "Say her name,"
say her name,
as they demanded accountability from the Louisville Police Department, which declared a state of emergency ahead of today's announcement.
We would be looking at would be violent activity, serious property damage.
Breonna's boyfriend, who was with her that night, told investigators they did not hear the cops announce themselves, so he fired a warning shot from his legally owned gun. An officer was injured. Walker is now suing the city and the police department. The mayor has ordered a county-wide 72-hour curfew from 9 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. beginning tonight. The National Guard has also been deployed to help protect critical infrastructure during any protests. Rena Roy, ABC News, New York.
And this now is a live look outside the Hall of Justice from the 10 News Breaking News Tracker. We're told just a couple of dozen demonstrators are sitting right there along the steps peacefully, some waving signs. The demonstration started about 30 minutes ago. We also sent out a mobile alert after today's decision was announced. To get real-time news on your smartphone or tablet, download our free app. Just go to the App Store and search 10 News.
Emotions running high over the destruction of a school mural created decades ago that celebrates the local Chicano community. ABC 10 News reporter Leah Pizzetti is joining us from Barrio Logan. And Leah, a lot of people are upset about what happened earlier today.
And Lindsay, you can now see the pile of rubble where this mural once stood for decades. There has been an ongoing fight out here all day, with artists upset that this mural that celebrated their Chicano heritage is now this pile of rubble.
Let somebody come and stand up.
A fight to preserve history.
It has your history on that wall.
While construction on a new school continues, the artists who painted this mural at Memorial Preparatory devastated that their work would be no more.
Painted on the wall was the diversity of the students, the diversity of the world. I got in there blacks, browns, whites, Chinese, and everybody that could concentrated there, including Jimi Hendrix.
These images painted by Chicano artists in the 70s. The San Diego Unified School District says asbestos on the walls meant the mural had to come down, but the artists say they wanted to try to save their work and heritage.
Important to preserve our historical events.
As the artists shared their final plea for preservation, one woman sat in the construction zone in protest, halting work, cries of support from people watching. She was then eventually arrested, and just moments later, that wall came down, their plea not enough.
We are finally facing what we want: justice, not just for one, but for all, right? So this is a very important move that we're doing here. And as you can see, they mean business too, so do we.
Now, a spokesperson for the district tells me they did not want to do this, but ultimately it was for those safety reasons. They said they did take high-quality photos of the mural before tearing it down. They do plan on displaying those photos to some capacity on the new updated campus, which they hope ultimately will benefit the community with these new plans for a better campus. They also say that there will be room for new murals on the campus once it is completed. Reporting live from Barrio Logan, Leah Pizzetti, ABC 10 News.
Leah, thank you. Now to the latest on the coronavirus here in our county. 278 new cases were reported today. That brings our total to 45,425. And there were 2 new deaths, bringing that total to 767. COVID-19 is also the 6th leading cause of death in San Diego County. Dr. Eric McDonald made that announcement today during the county's coronavirus briefing. He also said that 19 of those new cases today are connected to San Diego State. The university now has a total of 893 cases with an additional 40 probable cases. Dr. McDonald says we can all learn from the outbreak at San Diego State.
I think that really, rather than zeroing in on a specific age group, I think we should be talking about the behavior. And the behavior is not to have house parties and social gatherings that really allow the virus to spread. And that's the lesson that all San Diegans should be taking from the cases that have occurred at San Diego State University.
Meantime, the county also says it is working to increase testing for children by expanding county and state testing sites. That will be rolling out shortly, but no specific time frame was given. 2 of San Diego's biggest restaurant groups are getting anxious over the state's coronavirus regulations. Owners of the Cohen and Brigantine restaurants say the capacity limits aren't sustainable. Our ABC 10 News reporter John Horn explains why thousands of jobs now hang in the balance.
The county barely avoided moving into the state's most restrictive tier of coronavirus restrictions, meaning restaurants can still serve indoors at 25% capacity. But 2 of the region's biggest restaurant groups are not celebrating.
It's not sustainable.
Leslie Cohn stepping out in front of cameras this week, her family's restaurant group trying desperately to make it amid coronavirus restrictions.
As we enter the fall and winter months, our restaurants cannot, as I said, survive on 25%.
The Cohn Group spent more than $100,000 creating social distancing in 16 of its restaurants. That was before the 25% capacity limit was instituted. Their employment is now down 40% to about 1,200 workers.
We should be concentrating on positive test percentages, hospital capacity, ICU and PPE availability.
Her frustrations echoed by Mike Morton, who heads the Brigantine restaurants, where employment is off 20% to 1,000 workers. Morton says there are now waits every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday due to the capacity restraints.
But ultimately, guests are going to get tired of that, and what else does that do? It allows us to employ less people due to limited capacity.
The 25% cap will last at least another 3 weeks before the county would be eligible for the next lower tier, which would increase the cap to 50%, still a struggle in an industry famous for thin margins. John Horn, ABC 10 News.
And even the state's least restrictive tier caps indoor restaurant capacity at 50%. A spokesperson for the state says there is no timetable for releasing additional tiers.
The nation's top leaders in the fight against coronavirus were grilled by Congress today. The U.S. has just passed 200,000 COVID-19 deaths. ABC's Zareen Shah looks at when the experts say we can expect a vaccine.
A big day on Capitol Hill for the people in charge of government's fight against the coronavirus, testifying on the U.S. response 6 months following the first confirmed case. A big question on many minds: when will there be a vaccine? Center for Disease Control Director Robert Redfield standing by his timeline that most of America will not be vaccinated until summer of 2021.
I think that's going to take us April, May, June, possibly July to get the entire American public completely vaccinated. But we will have the 700 million doses based on projection by late March, early April.
The news coming as over 200,000 Americans have now lost their lives to the virus. Analysis obtained by ABC News shows that cases are increasing in 33 states, including Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico, and hospitalizations are also up in 16 states. Infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci testifying Wednesday, a number of people who've recovered from the virus continue to suffer from cognitive impairments like difficulty concentrating, among other challenges.
Have found to have a disturbing number of individuals who have inflammation of the heart.
Another uncertainty, how much cases could surge this fall. Health experts cautioning we could see a twindemic with large cases of flu and coronavirus cases potentially hitting at the same time.
You can prevent healthcare workers having to be overwhelmed simply by doing something that has been around for decades: get your flu vaccine.
Meanwhile, the Washington Post is reporting that the FDA is writing specific guidelines for the COVID vaccine, particularly that companies need to monitor trial volunteers for 2 months following the end of their trial. The FDA telling ABC News it intends to issue additional guidance shortly. Zoreen Shah, ABC News, Los Angeles.
Investigators in the Bobcat fire are looking at electrical equipment as a possible cause. The National Forest Service says a Southern California Edison substation experienced an issue around the time the fire broke out. The utility maintains that smoke was seen by a camera on Mount Wilson 6 minutes before the substation has the issue. There is still no official cause. The Bobcat fire has burned over 113,000 acres in the Angeles National Forest. Containment is now at 38%. In 15 years, California will put the brakes on selling all cars that run on gas. Governor Gavin Newsom signed an executive order today requiring that all cars sold in California must be zero emission by 2035.
You can still keep your internal combustion engine car. You can still have a market for used cars. You can still trade and transfer those cars. We're not taking anything away. We're providing an abundance of new choices and new technology.
Newsom said that the goal is to fight the climate change and that transportation accounts for more than half of California's carbon emissions. The California Fuels and Convenience Alliance issued a statement in response to the executive order saying electric vehicles leave behind California's most vulnerable populations. It called the order, quote, an outright disregard for the millions of Californians struggling to just get by in today's most taxing of circumstances. A man has been arrested in connection to a deadly crash this morning in Paradise Valley. Police have charged 18-year-old Eduardo Jones for manslaughter, hit and run, and DUI. They say Jones drove off an embankment on Munda Road early this morning and ran from the scene. His 4 passengers were all able to get out of the car, but one was taken to the hospital where she later died. A police helicopter spotted Jones hiding in some bushes surrounded by coyotes. He's being held on $1 million bail.
Your voice, your vote. We are just 41 days out from the presidential election, and new polls from key battleground states suggest a tight race between President Trump and his rival Joe Biden. ABC's Karen Travers has a look at the numbers from Washington.
New polls in 2 critical battleground states show a very tight race as the Biden campaign picks up another endorsement from a prominent Republican.
Hello, 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 hello.
Joe Biden on the campaign trail in North Carolina, where voting is already underway. His first visit to that critical battleground state since the Democratic primary season. New polls from ABC News and the Washington Post show a very tight race in both Arizona and Florida, states President Trump won in 2016. A key challenge for Biden, his tepid 13-point lead among Hispanics in Florida among registered voters. A winning issue for the president, a double-digit edge when it comes to who voters trust to handle the economy. The Biden campaign hoping a new endorsement will help lock down voters in Arizona. Cindy McCain, the widow of the late Senator John McCain, on ABC's Good Morning America, saying she hopes she can convince suburban women who are on the fence to join Team Biden.
I, like everyone else, want to have a president that will have my back, that shows empathy and compassion, who has courage and dignity in how they lead, and that's Joe Biden.
President Trump responding on Twitter, writing, "Never a fan of John. Cindy can have Sleepy Joe." And with less than a week until the first presidential debate, the candidates turning their attention to that showdown on stage in Ohio.
Started to prepare, but I haven't gotten into it really heavily. I will beginning tomorrow.
I sort of prepare every day by just doing what I'm doing.
President Trump follows Joe Biden down to North Carolina. On Thursday, he'll make his 4th visit there in just a month. It's a state he won 4 years ago. Karen Travers, ABC News, Washington.